Imagine that during a power outage, it's not your flashlight battery that dies, but something far more important, the power supply to essential medication. Suddenly, you realize your emergency plan wasn't as foolproof as you thought. The generator won't start, the fuel has deteriorated over time, the batteries no longer perform as they used to. And all that supposedly indestructible equipment turned out to be more fragile than promised because no one told you about the real wear and tear of time and the dependency it creates. But the good news is that simple, legal, and much more durable technologies exist that almost no one mentions, capable of providing you with long-term power and stable communication without relying on expensive systems or tactical fads. And today you're going to discover why many modern solutions fail and which ones truly stand the test of time. This video is informative. It is not intended to create alarm or replace professional advice. Its goal is to educate and help the audience make better decisions. Number 1. The thermal secret the industry doesn't want you to discover. Imagine that your whole life you've been led to believe that to survive in the cold, you needed to become some kind of inflatable doll, layers upon layers, and even more bulk. For decades, the automotive industry repeated the same formula as if it were a universal law: fatter equals hotter. And of course, who would dare question it? But real science tells a much more interesting story. The enemy isn't the cold itself, but the silent journey your body heat makes when it encounters a material that lets it escape. Heat wants to flee your body in 3 ways: conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction is when the heat escapes through solid objects. Convection is that wind that steals your heat as if it had a life of its own. And radiation is the same invisible energy that warms us on a sunny day. Traditional materials do their best by trapping air pockets, but air moves, cools, gets wet, and compresses, and suddenly your super jacket isn't keeping you warm at all. That's why we end up looking like polar bears every winter to compensate for the limitations of down and synthetic fibers. When it rains, those air pockets fill with water, and the insulation simply collapses. And just when you need warmth the most, you lose it the fastest. That's why the industry responds with more thickness, more filling, more volume. It's an endless cycle until a material so rare appears that it breaks all those rules effortlessly. That material is the famous silica aerogel, also called frozen smoke, because it looks like a piece of solidified mist. It's such a strange invention that it almost seems like something out of science fiction. Light as a cloud, composed of 99.8% air, and with pores for such tiny particles that literally prevent wind from moving inside. At that scale, the molecules collide so much with the walls that convection disappears. It's as if the cold air is trapped outside, unable to find a way in. The result is insulation that works without bulk, doesn't collapse, doesn't absorb water, doesn't degrade, and can withstand extreme temperature differences. NASA used it to protect electronics on Mars, where one day it can be 20 degrees Celsius, and at night it can plummet to 60 degrees Celsius. And yet, the material remains as firm as the first day. Just a few millimeters offer the same thermal performance as several centimeters of down. It's crazy, but crazy that works out. So why don't we see ultra-thin aerogel jackets in every store? For a simple reason: business model. A garment made with this material could last for more than a decade without losing efficiency. That would be a huge problem for an industry that depends on selling you a new jacket every few winters. Although some brands incorporate it, like Oros, it's still an expensive technology and difficult to produce, which keeps it in a very select niche. Even so, aerogel is no longer a secret reserved for astronauts. You can buy it in flexible blankets to improve sleeping bags, shelters, and even pipes without adding weight or bulk. It's a demonstration of how science can solve problems that industry prefers to leave untouched. And while it won't replace all winter clothing tomorrow, it does demonstrate something powerful. Sometimes the technology that's truly worthwhile is hidden, silent, and waiting for someone willing to take advantage of it. Remember to subscribe to be the first to know how to be prepared completely for free. Number 2. The silent technology everyone ignores. For years, thousands of people preparing for emergencies have relied on the same solution: a cheap, flashy handheld radio that promises guaranteed communication. Sounds good until you discover that most of these radios work exactly the same way they did decades ago. Direct transmission, with no way to bypass mountains, buildings, or long distances. And worst of all, anyone listening on the same frequency can hear you without it's not a modern tool, it's basically a megaphone with an antenna. The problem isn't the intention but the technology. Traditional radios rely on the famous line of sight. If something gets in the way, the signal dies. If you're far away, it dies. If someone else is monitoring, they hear you unfiltered. And since voice encryption isn't allowed on many bands, your conversations are completely public. It's a system that works, but within very strict limits that almost no one mentions. That's why so many people think they're prepared when in reality, they only have a very basic tool. That's where a different, almost counterintuitive idea comes in. Instead of sending a direct signal, create a network where each device can help transmit the message. A network that doesn't depend on towers, companies, or giant antennas. That's Mestastic, small devices that use LoRa technology to send text messages over long distances while consuming minimal energy. They aren't traditional radios. They function as a kind of local internet created by the very people who use it. The magic is in the topology. If you and I are too far apart, my message doesn't travel directly. It jumps from one nearby device to another, then to another, and so on until it reaches you. Each user becomes part of the bridge. The more nodes there are, the stronger and more flexible the network becomes. If one goes down, another takes its place. There's no weak point that could bring down a tower or a server. It's literally a living mesh that grows and adapts on its own. The energy efficiency is astonishing. A small module with a solar panel can operate for months without human intervention, sending short messages, locations, or small amounts of data. It's not suitable for photos or videos, but it is perfect for essential communication in a way that doesn't rely on commercial infrastructure. Furthermore, by using modern encryption standards, messages remain private within the group that shares the channel keys. So, the question arises, if it's so useful, why don't we see it in stores or on TV commercials? The truth is simple. It's not a commercial product designed to generate monthly payments, nor does it depend on data plans or subscriptions. It's open technology that anyone can use for free. After the initial purchase, it's not a threat to anyone, it simply doesn't fit into traditional business models based on recurring services. And perhaps that's its greatest value. It allows groups, families, or communities to have an alternative means of communication when other networks fail or are unavailable. It doesn't replace the internet or mobile phones, but it does offer an extra layer of resilience that can make all the difference in unforeseen situations. It's not about control or rebellion, but about technological autonomy. Having your own network doesn't make you invincible, but it does make you more prepared, more connected, and less dependent on systems that sometimes fail just when you need them most. Before revealing number 1, share this information in your WhatsApp and Facebook groups to spread the word. Number 3, the hidden truth about modern batteries. Most people who prepare for emergencies tend to rely too heavily on their batteries until the day they discover that they aren't the energy shield they imagined, but rather a collection of aging technologies. They degrade and fail, even if you don't use them. Between lithium, ANG, and lead acid, many believe they are building independence when, in reality, they are building a system that requires constant replacements and attention that no one warns you about at the beginning. Lithium batteries are the most popular example. They are lightweight, fast charging, and with high energy density. But each charge cycle leaves a small trace, microscopic formations that deteriorate their capacity over time. Even without use, just by existing, they lose performance every year. After half a decade in storage, they are no longer what they once were, and after about 10 years, many simply become a useless block. Not because you misuse them, but because that's how their internal chemistry works. With lead-acid batteries, the story isn't so romantic either. They have accompanied humanity for a century, but their Achilles heel is also chemical. The sulfate that accumulates on their plates reduces capacity little by little, like sand accumulating in an hourglass that never stops, even when treated with extreme care. Their lifespan is limited, and they also require ventilation. Maintenance and handling are more delicate than most people imagine. Then comes the question everyone asks themselves sooner or later. Is there an alternative that doesn't have this hidden expiration date? And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. At the beginning of the 20th century, Thomas Edison developed a battery so durable it almost seems like an artifact from another era. A nickel-iron cell whose chemical reaction doesn't degrade the electrolyte and which can cycle thousands of times without suffering the typical deterioration of other technologies. What's surprising is that these batteries continue to work more than 100 years after they were manufactured. They are resistant to abuse, deep discharges, extreme cold, and prolonged storage. You can forget about them for decades, change the electrolyte, and they'll work again as if nothing had happened. It's simple, strong, and patient technology designed to outlast us. So why aren't they everywhere? Not because of their performance, but for something much more practical. They weigh more than a modern battery and don't fit into a market that needs to sell replacements every few years. A nearly immortal technology doesn't fit into a throwaway economy, but they still exist, manufactured by small companies, far from advertising and commercial glitz. And when you start thinking about energy that can last a lifetime, an even more interesting question arises. If solving the battery problem is possible, what's the next real challenge? Heat, cold, and temperature. Survival isn't just about having an electrical charge, it's about knowing how to conserve body heat and prevent nature from winning through exhaustion. And for that, there are also simple but little-known solutions that debunk many modern myths about how to stay warm and safe.